I am probably going to give people 1 or 2 more minutes before we get too much into this. So probably what I'll do is just do a bit of an introduction about myself, and who doesn't love talking about themselves. A little bit about how I got involved with the PlanDoCheckAct thinking style, and specifically how that developed into implementing it in environmental management systems. So my first job out of university was in a vaccine production facility in Upper Hutt, and because it was involved in the pharmaceutical industry, there was a lot of good management practices being implemented, and this was the very early days of the sort of 9001 quality systems. And even at that time, we were talking about PlanDoCheckAct, about it being a tool, a mental tool that we would apply whenever we were thinking about things. Oh, that's one of my colleagues popping things up on the screen. Hopefully that won't happen again. When I started working for Landcare Research, Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research, I was involved in getting our testing laboratory accredited to the 17025 standard for testing and calibration laboratories. So again, what I found was that there was this quite clear description of thinking about planning, about implementing, about reviewing, and about improving. So the EnviroMark program that I'm involved with is again based around one of the ISO standards, 14001, and again has these thought concepts very clearly woven into how to approach thinking about dealing with risks and opportunities. So when I give people the little talk for the EnviroMark program about PlanDoCheckAct, I will often say to them, you will see this reflected in many of the other things you're doing in your organization already. Try to see how you're doing them there. Try to understand how that thinking can be brought to environmental things. Now, sometimes, especially with very small organizations, they don't have a robust health and safety program in place. And so thinking about PlanDoCheckAct opens up wide opportunities to improve all over the place. Okay, let's move into, oh, that's not going. Why is that not going? No, that's the wrong one. Bother, I've done something wrong. Excuse me, folks, for a moment. I'm struggling with my own technology here. I've closed a window and I shouldn't have closed it. That's you. Is it this one? No, it's this one. Haha, you're back. All right, so as a general view of what we're trying to do here, I would like people to understand what this PlanDoCheckAct thing is, how it helps, and it'll also give us a chance to think about what environmental success actually means. Finally, I hope that you'll clearly see the other ways in which this PCDA thinking mode might strengthen your businesses. Now, we did have planned to have a case study speaker. Stuart Badland from Dunhams was going to be speaking as well this afternoon. Unfortunately, he's had a family emergency and can't make it. But he's given me what he was going to say. I've got a little write-up of it. And the thing that he would like me to talk about is how this affected his health and safety thinking and the rigor of what they do moving on ahead. Okay, so what is PlanDoCheckAct? To use the ISO terminology that I'm most familiar with, it is a planned approach. And the ISO standards talk quite clearly about taking what they call a planned approach. It's a way of thinking about projects you're going to run, systems you're going to create, and ensuring that you've looked at it in a wide enough field of view so that the thing's going to work for you and that it's incorporating all the things you should be thinking about. Now, as I said the last time I gave one of these webinars, the wise old heads at the ISO standards organization have looked at all of the things that have caused major disasters in the past. Where was the failing? Was it because somebody didn't ask a question that they should have asked? Was it something that they just assumed somebody was going to do? Where was this problem? And what they've come up with is this PlanDoCheckAct approach to help you identify in planning all of those things and then implement things and make sure you're getting the results you hoped for. Projects are a really good way of starting into the PlanDoCheckAct thinking. I hope that you'll be able to identify an upcoming project in your own organization that you can use this tool on to start developing PCDA thinking in what you're doing. You may find you're already doing this. You may find you're already doing it automatically. That's because you're wonderful. That's because you are capable. What happens when the next person comes along and takes up your role? Will they be as experienced as you are in doing this kind of approach? It's not a bad idea to build it into the way you think. It also helps teach the new crop of managers that are coming up through an organization a really good approach for making sure they're thinking about all the things that they should be thinking about. If you would like some more specific discussion about specific projects that you'd like to apply this to, I'm absolutely happy to talk to any of you after the seminar. You can contact me directly. Absolutely happy to have a chat to you about those things. Look at it as an opportunity to further improve the way you approach projects and systems. I'm not saying that anything that you're doing is wrong. Let's just see if there's any ways to do it even better. Okay, so how does this thing work? It leads you into taking a step back and looking at everything that's happening. One moves through the stages of this PlanDoCheckAct cycle. Initially, you're trying to understand all the things that are going on. You're trying to understand what are the things we're doing and how might that be an issue. In environmental terms, we say, what are all the things we're doing and how might they change the environment? In health and safety, you're saying, what are all the things we do and how might they harm people? In food safety, you're saying, what are all the things we do and how might that impact on the quality and safety of the product that we're producing? In quality, you're saying, what are each of the steps we're doing and where are the bits where it could go wrong and lead to a substandard product or not consistent product? It's the same process in every single case. When we move to the do part of things, we're trying to ensure we've clearly thought out and follow those instructions on the implementation. So if we decide that we're going to contact 6 different suppliers and send them a letter saying, hey, can you tell us what your changes are in the future that you're planning on making so we can make sure our quality stays the same? How do you make sure that that outcome is what you were hoping for? Well, in the planning stage, you might have written up a letter. But in the doing stage, you've got to make sure you send it to everybody. You've got to make sure they received it. You've got to make sure you get the information back again. So there's some things that people will be doing. They need to know what those things are. They need to know how you expect them to do it. And they need to actually achieve something and come back to you and go, here we go. Here's the result. Once you have a result, you're going to compare it to what you thought you would achieve in the plan section, to your expected outcome. I call this monitoring. So you take measurements and you monitor them. You thought you'd achieve this. I'm holding my hands up for those that are looking at the wrong part of the screen. And you're assessing what you actually have achieved against that to see, does it align? Is it falling short? Is it far better? And no matter what you're getting, you then ask the question, is this good enough? What should I do about this based on what I'm seeing? And that's what the act is. How could I implement any changes to make things better? When designing a new process, it's helpful to look at it and check that all of these steps are there. That's what this PCDA thing is. It is a mental tool that you can put onto any new process or system that you're creating and say, can I see all of these things are there and are being robustly carried out in this new thing that I'm trying to do? Okay, now, once you've gone through the cycle once, you do it again and again and again and again. This is one of those things that the new health and safety regulations very strongly brought into play for New Zealand businesses. In the past, they would have identified what the health and safety risks were. They would have implemented their controls or decided what to put into place. And then they would have said to people, do this, do that, and then gone, phew, it's sorted. We don't have to worry about this anymore. But what you find is sometimes the people who are implementing it don't actually implement it the way you thought it was going to be done, so it doesn't work. Or something comes along and they get distracted and they don't actually implement it at all. Or they implement it, but it doesn't work. And so the people aren't being protected against whatever that hazard was. And so the health and safety regulations now insist upon this check phase, but not just once, again and again and again and again. So they require us to go back regularly and ask the question, can I see that control is actually in place? That's point number one. It's there. We're doing what we said we'd do to control the hazard. The next question is it giving us the results we expected? Are people being protected? And then the third question is, should we change anything to make it better? Are there opportunities for improvement? And that's been embedded now into those regulations. So if you like, into compliance and the legislation, to do this PlanDoCheckAct as far as health and safety are concerned. So it's recognized as being really beneficial from there. It's not just an environmental management system tool. This thought process can be used in all of these other options. In health and safety, well, I've just given you an example of that. In quality, it can be around pausing at some point and saying, okay, what are the things that could go wrong? Maybe our supplier could change something and not tell us they've made a change. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to identify which things we think are critical supply points, and we're going to contact those people and ensure that our contract with them tells them that they will inform us before changes are made so that we can take those things into account and make sure it's working. And then the check would be, have we been seeing that they've been doing that? Have we confirmed with them that they've remembered and that there have been no changes? That's why we've had no communications. And then we say to ourselves, so did we get the results we hoped for? Yes, fine, continue. No, okay, so we didn't get a letter from this supplier and they've admitted that they actually didn't remember to tell us. We've got to run around in circles to make sure there's been no problem now. We've got to check and see that they didn't make any changes and we've not been put at risk by them. And we've also got to make sure that we remind them regularly that we want this behavior from them. Inventory management. Again, you might, I can remember in the early days of the Enviromark program, I was working with Hutamaki plastics manufacturers over in West Auckland. And they were doing their inventory management, and when new stocks came in, they were just stacked in the storage area. And so what happened is there was stuff at the back that was never being used, and it would expire before it had actually been used because they weren't rotating their stock around and bringing out the old stuff first. So they identified this issue of wastage and then found a way to fix it using this sort of approach. Food safety, you're going to see if anybody's got a HACCP program, it's already well and truly built into this, and the same with transitional facilities under MPI. If you're importing stuff from overseas, it's built in there as well. Okay, I think I've probably talked about that bit enough, actually. Let's talk a little bit about what a PCDA system is not. If you're thinking about implementing PCDA thinking, don't do it because you think you're going to make lots of money. You may make lots of money. It may make wastage much less. It might allow innovative thinking. It might bring people's attention back to saying, well, can we make it better? Can we improve stuff? That's the whole Kaizen idea. But there's no guarantees. Why are there no guarantees? Just as I said before, because you people are all marvelous. When you have a good staff member who automatically does this kind of thinking without ever having been prompted to learn how to do it, you achieve these sorts of outcomes, but the risk is they might leave. And if they leave, what happens then? People make mistakes. If you've got experienced staff in a role, they are giving you the benefit of the logical and robust thinking that they've developed over their careers, hopefully. Maybe not, because maybe their skills are in a different area and it's more about the competency of their technical skills than of their project planning. But there's no guarantee that putting in place PCDA thinking is going to make you extra money, but it might. Okay. It's not a way to force unwanted change. Change management is there's another whole pile of skills associated with that, another whole pile of thinking associated with that. I guess the point I want to make here is that if you're trying to smooth the way for change, doing the planning portion of it is really, really useful because it helps people to understand why change is necessary. If you can't convince people there's something broken about the way things are currently being done, there's not going to be a lot of enthusiasm for changing the way things are done. If you can't convince people that at the end of the process it'll be better, they're not going to necessarily want to engage with the change either. And if you can't show them how they'll stepwise get from where they are now to where they want to go, they're going to feel confused and lost and not terribly enthusiastic again. The planning and planned do and review steps in the PlanDoCheckAct make change management much easier. But you still need to go through the process of the communication and the clarifying for people these three important steps in thinking. Why this current situation is broken, how much more wonderful the new situation is going to be and why they want to be there, and the plan to get there in bite-sized chunks. Okay. Some people think that introducing PlanDoCheckAct thinking is going to make things more laborious. It's going to make meetings longer. It's going to be an artificial approach. Honestly, it just becomes a natural way of thinking. It teaches you to take a step back from being so close to whatever it is you're working with and looking at a big picture view of things, which is always helpful. And it also helps you to take a step back emotionally from when you're wanting to make changes and you think, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. When you're looking at it a bit wider, you can see that it's worth the amount of work that you're going to be putting into it. Very important. Okay, it's not going to fix all your problems for you because you are the one that needs to fix those problems. It's going to help you fix the problems. It's going to make clear to you the plan to achieve it, the steps that you need to take, and how you will know if you're being successful or not. Capable staff, as I've said, will be using this kind of thought process already. There's no guarantee that you will get other outcomes beyond an environmental management system outcome if you're doing this kind of thinking in the Environmark program. But it does tend to leak out into other areas. And it should be the same no matter where you're putting it, because what will happen is the staff involved with doing this thinking in your environmental work will learn how to do it, become converts basically, and they will start to do it in the other areas of their work in the organization too. And they'll start to query when things aren't being done. They'll start to ask questions like, well, we said we were going to do this, but there's no reporting coming back to us to let us know if it's being successful or not. So that's not good enough. That doesn't fit in with PCDA type thinking. Where's our review of the results? Okay, so I'm just keeping an eye on my time. I've been talking for, is it really that long? Yeah, half an hour already. Okay, so when you're trying to implement PlanDoCheckAct thinking, it's really important to take people along in the journey. But the journey starts with you. It's going to be about deciding that you will use this process yourself in any project or creation of system that you're working on. It's not supposed to create more work for people. There will be many systems in your organization that should already be using this process, especially health and safety. So there will be an existing way in your organization that this is working. Use that. Don't recreate new process. Don't try and impose very different methodologies on a system that's already working in a certain way. Try to just stretch it or tweak it or move it slightly to slightly change the direction. It'll save yourself an awful lot of work, and when people are familiar with an existing way of doing things, it's much easier for them to accept some slight tweaks to it. We don't want you to be spending so much time working on your systems that you don't get your own work done. It's just one of those things that's really important to ensure that this kind of improvement is just something that is ticking along in the background. You just put in a little bit of time in on a regular basis so that you achieve this improvement that you're seeking. What you will see is that PlanDoCheckAct occurs at different strata within your organization. So if you look at an individual project, there's going to be the plan, implementation, review on how it's going, and improvement of the project cycle happening within that little project. Within a department, there might be a group of things that are happening. There'll be planning, implementation of a number of different things, a review on how they're all working and tweaking to make them better. There will be systems that you're running that you will want to look at the system itself and say, are we happy with the results we're getting from this? Do we need to make changes? There will be some things that aren't yet a system, and you'll start them at the very planning phase and move them on from there. So this occurs again and again and again. It's almost like a fractal. It's a repeating pattern that no matter which point in the organization you're looking at it, you will be able to see that same thing happening again and again and again. Okay. I would suggest you don't limit your thinking on PCDA to just an environmental management system, but it's a nice place to start. Health and safety is even better, but yeah, just start somewhere small. Take bite-sized chunks. Start off just by applying this into projects. Once people get used to it, once you're locking in the capability because your team started to use it, it becomes much easier to spread it out into the rest of the organization. Leadership needs to be connected in a real way to the decision making. The worst thing that can happen in PCDA is that in the planning session, somebody does their happy little planning piece, starts to implement it, and then leadership discovers something's happening that they're not happy about, or that they didn't expect, or that they didn't budget it for, and they stomp on it real fast and stop it, and that puts everybody off. So then in any of these things, there needs to be a good connectivity to the people who are making those strategic decisions to make sure that you're getting the results you hope for. The last one makes me smile. Use documents, don't let them use you. The whole thing about documents is that they are codifying our planning. They're saying, here's what the plan is, here's what we want you to do. Then they provide you with an understanding of the right way to implement whatever it is you're trying to do. And generally, you're creating some kind of record keeping that will capture the outcomes and allow you to do your review. All of that can be done through the minutes of a regular meeting. So you're creating a list of things that are intended to be done next, and a list of things that have been done, and whether you're happy with the outcomes or not. You don't need bog loads of extra documentation. So try and find a nice, simple way of doing it. Again, though, having said that, if you already have other processes like a HACCP program, food safety program, that has existing documentation, maybe you want to create environmental or health and safety documentation that looks just like that, but looking at those outcomes you're looking for in health and safety or environmental, so that there's the familiarity and people know where to go and they know what to fill in there. Okay, so what does this mean, planning? What do you do when you're planning? We're trying to understand what are the things we're doing and how is that a risk or an opportunity? We're trying to understand clearly who's involved in doing these things, because they're the people we're probably going to be asking to make changes, and maybe they need extra training. Maybe there's some skill issues there. Remember the connection with the purse holders, with those who are making strategic decisions. You need to be feeding that, plan that reporting now before you even start any projects. When you design a project plan, you need to know what the expected outcome is. That's what you're going to be comparing your observed outcome to during the actual review process. We call it measuring to manage. You would design as much of the project as you possibly can. Often what will happen is you'll say, we want to improve our up the chain life cycle environmental impacts. So the first thing we need to understand is, what are our suppliers currently doing? What have they identified as their risks? Because they're the experts on their stuff, they're the best person to ask. So your project, the first step in your project would be communicating with them and finding stuff back. And then there might be a next step after that, and you don't know what that will be at this stage, but at least you can pencil in that you intend over the first 3 months is going to be this, second and third 3 months is going to be deciding what's important, and then in the last month of the year we're going to be asking our suppliers to do whatever it is we want them to do. So you're actually trying to map out your project as much as you possibly can, even though some bits are a bit vague. When you're thinking about what you do and what might be sources of risk or opportunity, I encourage people to play that children's game, what's next? What happens then? What happens then? What happens then? Okay. Often the best place to start is by looking at the process of what you do. Now, here's an example from a manufacturing organization. So you'd say, well, what do we do in this area? Well, the first thing we do is we put all the batching together. And then it goes through the extrusion machine. And then we trim it. And then we print logos on it. And then we put in the grommets and wire bits and sticky tabs and other bits and pieces. Then we pack it up and then we send it. Looking at this, I think there's some bits missing. There's some bits missing upstream of it because there's no error going into batching. And I know it's come from inwards goods. So I know there's some things missing up there. And I know there's some things missing downstream from packaging because just because we've packaged it doesn't mean it's left our site yet. So there's going to be some stuff around distribution, around maybe couriers picking it up, or maybe we shift it ourselves, or there'll be some other things happening there. So taking a process mapping approach to something is basically saying from the very beginning, what are the sequential steps that happen? That allows you to look at the stuff on the left and the right and say, what are the raw materials and resources going into that process and what are the waste products coming out of that process? Because that's how the environment gets changed from an environmental point of view. If you were doing this for health and safety, you'd saying during the batching process, how could people get hurt? Can the things going into it harm people? Can the waste coming out harm people? You might find that certain points in here have moving parts that are pinch hazards or sharp hazards or something like it. Or you might find that the inks and solvents on this are actually some way toxic. So identifying all the stuff allows you to look at each individual point and say, is there an issue here for health and safety? Is there an issue here for my environmental planning? I'm not saying you'll do all those things at once, but just to give you an idea about how this kind of process mapping is really useful for any risk and opportunity identification and management. Okay. Whoop. Now, that's your normal stuff that you're doing. That's your day-to-day stuff that you're doing, but you're also going to need to think about the predictable but infrequent things. So you know you're going to do them. Someone's going to come in and change light bulbs and the high bay lights. You're going to hire new vehicles for your fleet. You're going to get new clients in who want you to do something different than you normally would do. It's not frequent, but you know it's going to happen. You need to include those things in too and create a similar kind of process map for those kinds of things. And that might be maintenance. It might be yard cleaning, it might be redecorating, it might be buying new computer equipment. There's lots of different possibilities in there for the abnormals. And once you've thought about all your normals and all your abnormals, you'd be saying, what kind of emergencies could happen that would change things too? And you'd be doing this thinking for, again, health and safety, food safety, inventory management. It works for all of them. So this identification point is sort of kind of central to doing a really good job on everything. When you come to implement things, when you're in the do phase, I thought I would mention these three things as being something that will make it a lot easier for you. Turn your do steps into bite-sized chunks. Discrete little bits. Maybe we have an IT team who use what they call sprints, which is a two-week piece of work, and then they stop and look at the results of the sprint and decide what it all means and what they need to do next and did it work and that sort of thing. That's actually a really useful approach. Make sure there's someone responsible for that sprint, someone who owns it, somebody who will make sure that they keep an eye on how things are going and make sure people follow the instructions and make sure that it's being done as we expected. Make sure that you're building in this measurement idea and some kind of reporting structure so that there's no nasty surprises for the powers that be. When you are when you've got some information back from your process that you have been implementing, from your do phase, you want to look at it and go, is this what I hoped for? should I change something? Can I do it better? And finally, if you can do something better or you do need to change something, how are you going to do that? You really do want to achieve your planned targets if you possibly can, just for credibility to senior leadership, if nothing else. You may need to change your target. Maybe you've learned something new that you didn't understand before, and now your 10% reduction is only going to be a 7% reduction, and you know why, but you need to alter your targets. That's fine. That's all part of that continual tweaking to make sure that you're getting the results you hope for. Okay, so how will you start to implement using PlanDoCheckAct? As I said before, I think the easiest way to do that is to start simple, start small, start on a small project, get used to doing it, see that it works, become comfortable with it, and then start to share this way of working with the rest of your organization. You could go in and try and change everything at once. You could implement a new management system. That's one way of doing this. And that's the sort of thing that the Enviromark program people experience, is that suddenly they've got this whole new system and it all works under PlanDoCheckAct. And they've got a person who's their project champion in the organization, and I work with them, or the CAM that is involved, their mentor works with them to help them do it on a large scale all over the place, all at the same time. And that's wonderful. If you want to do it that way, that's fantastic. If you want to start off just to see how well it works for you in an organization, here's another option. Yeah, I'll talk more about the approach from the Enviromark program in a minute, but what I need to do quickly is find the wee presentation that I was given by Stuart to read out for you. So Stuart asked me to give his apology. His father-in-law has become suddenly ill and he needed to be in attendance. So I've got a wee statement here from him, basically about who Dunhams are and what their experience has been with the PlanDoCheckAct program approach using the Enviromark program. So I'll just read this out to you. Sorry. Dunhams is a family business that has been in operation since 1921. We operate out of Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. We offer New Zealand's most comprehensive range of butchery supplies. They include top quality ingredients, tools, and equipment. Being such a long-term operator, we've seen many changes to the business over the last 99 years. One of the more recent has been the interest shown by our customers for environmental credentials. We've now been gold level certified in Enviromark for over 6 months. One of the reasons we chose to work with Toitū EnviroCare was that they talked about ensuring an environmental program fitted in with all our other processes. We already run food safety, health and safety, transitional facility, HAZNO and quality systems, though they could not have been described as harmonized. At the very beginning of creating our environmental management system, we were looking at our compliance issues. Our Toitū mentor encouraged us to apply the PlanDoCheckAct thinking to these areas first. We quickly saw this was a more robust approach and led us to expanding our health and safety register to cover more infrequent but predictable risks and some of the emergencies we hadn't covered before. It also led to some more stringent monitoring of outcomes, like how well our control measures were working. This way of working changes your focus backwards and forwards between the day-to-day work that needs to be done and the strategic outcomes you're seeking. It involves people in more decisions that affect them. Sorry, got to move one of my windows, and make sure those decisions are solid and grounded on facts. Since starting on this journey, we have added a solar array, improved our recycling, and connected more with how our clients would like us to pack their products. It's early days, but it's clear this way of running projects gives far more predictable results than making it up as you go along. It's a discipline, but well worth learning the approach. Excellent. I'm going to work out how I changed the window last time. This one. Yes, this one. Yes. Okay. So the take-home message I would like you to take from this is that PlanDoCheckAct is a useful approach to any system or project that you want to have running in your organization. It's been proven to work and it's trusted to prevent really serious harm. I think if you embed the process into a group, then it will spread out naturally to the rest of the organization. PlanDoCheckAct is often called things like PlanDoCheckChange or Plan Implement, Review, Improve. They're all the same idea. There's also possibly additional steps that people put in, but it's the same kind of process, the same kind of thinking. I'm not saying that one way is better than others for this, but it's about building that process into your normal day-to-day business operations. Now, implementing an environmental management system absolutely uses the PlanDoCheckAct cycle. If you are interested in having some environmental credentials that have been verified, please do get in contact with us so that we can help you to implement that into a systematic system that's based on international best practice. The EnviroMark program is has taken all of the criteria of ISO 14001 and broken it up into manageable steps. The levels are targeted for different size and complexities of organizations, and really we're aiming to give you something that's fit for purpose. I think, yeah, we'll move on to questions now. If people would like to put things into the chat window, then I can speak to those questions. I think we've got about a quarter of an hour left for questions. If anybody would like to put any into the chat, we can get started into those. If there's no questions, then you're welcome to go on to have your lunch. Okay, not seeing. Sounds like I did a really good job in presenting and there are no questions. No. Okay. Oh, no worries. You're welcome, Kim. Okay, well, I'm supposed to move. There we go. So thank you everybody for coming along to my webinar for this afternoon. If there's anything that you would like to talk to us about coming out of this, anything you think about later on, please do get in contact with us. You've got email contacts for Toitū and EnviroCare. You know, very, very keen to talk to you about anything that you might have as a question arising out of this, especially if you're ready to do some environmental certification, then I would be thrilled to talk to you about that.
Yep. Chris, just to quickly interrupt you there, we've got a question.
Have we?
Can you see it? How can an EMS benefit a professional services business?
Oh, good question. All right, so an environmental management system, a lot of people think about it just for manufacturers. They're thinking, okay, there's a risk of pollution, we want to manage that. There's a risk of wasting resources, we want to manage that. If you imagine for a second, somebody like an architect, a professional service organization, the environmental impacts that they'll identify in their normal day-to-day stuff is nothing compared to the downstream effects of building a drafty, nasty building, right? Or using materials that are not the best options. The quality of the advice they give and whether the clients pick up that advice and run with it, that's what they're interested in from an environmental performance point of view. So I've got a number of people that we're working with, two that I'd mention straight away. There's a project management company in Auckland, and their environmental management system has two wings to it. One is concentrating on the in-house stuff that they do, the fleet of vehicles that they run, the nuts and bolts stuff that they have direct control over, and that's great. But because an environmental management system takes into account the life cycle of what you're doing, it thinks about the impacts of downstream decisions. And it looks and identifies that they need to think about whether a client will be open to discussing environmental improvements as part of their designs, and things like waste management of the contractors who are doing the build for them, and building management systems and what the building's being built of, and all these other things that they've got as possibilities that they could present, that they want to provide all the options they can. Some of their clients will not be receptive to this. So the first step in their environmental management project around this is identifying for each of our new clients, are they receptive? No, completely not. Okay, we'll put that to one side. Maybe, okay, well, we'll tentatively offer to them and say at the very beginning, hey, look, we specialize in this. We can help you do this. Here's the kind of savings you might make. What do you think? Or maybe it's somebody like Toyota or Air New Zealand, and they're definitely going to be keen, in which case that'll be part of their presentation. So that's the beginning of that process. The second thing that can happen within that is something like saying, how do we know our staff have all the competencies required to provide good advice in this area? Do we have some people who should be assigned to these projects as the specialist? And most people will learn these things over time. So there's some stuff around in the environmental management system about making sure the competency of the advice giver is up to the right level. Then there's going to be targets or measurements around, I've decided this client is possibly receptive. How am I going to present it to them? Okay, I'm going to present it this way. How did that go? Did they like what we were saying? Did they not like? What kind of feedback can I bring back into the system to learn more and do it better next time? Now, another type of client that I'm working with is a investment company. And they're again, they've got a small office. They've got maybe 60, 70 people in it, but it's just basically an office. There's nothing else. So they've got things in their office like events they might run every now and again for clients, IT equipment, recycling of paper and stuff like that. But really that's nothing compared to the effects of somebody choosing to invest in a green investment product. And so the same kinds of things come through for them in their EMS. How do we make sure that our staff are able to present the options appropriately to prospective clients? How do we assess how well that went? How do we look at the overall effect we're having each year and say, okay, we believe that we've shifted this portion of our clients into environmental decisions, and that's a big achievement for us. That's a big win. So I hope you see that the environmental management system is just as useful for service-based or more indirect affecting organizations than just the the manufacturing type ones. Hopefully that answered your question. I think it might have taken a bit longer than I'd expected to.
All right, we've also got Ellen here who has her hand raised and would like to ask you a question.
Oh. Do I need to unmute you?
No,
Go
sorry,
Ellen.
this was an incident.
Hey.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question at the moment. My
Right.
apologies.
No worries. We're all getting used to the new technology. Okay. I think that might be it then. Thank you all very much for attending. I hope it was useful for you. And I hope you'll come back again to some of our other webinars that we've got planned. Until that point, thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye for now.